Hey everyone, welcome back to the Collector's Compass, the official podcast of Collectors MD, where we explore the intersection of collecting, mental wellness, and responsible engagement in the hobby. I'm your host, Alyx Efron, founder of Collectors MD, and today's episode is an important one. We're diving into a topic that hits close to home for a lot of people in and around the hobby. Things like gambling addiction, recovery, and the psychology of the chase. Our guest is someone whose work is changing the conversation around all of that. His name is Rob Minnick, also known as Rob ODAAT. He is the founder of One Day at a Time Gambling Awareness, a movement built on lived experience and relentless honesty. Rob's story isn't about quitting gambling, it's about rebuilding a life, one decision, one habit, and one day at a time. Through his growing YouTube channel, social media presence, and website, Rob has created a safe space for people who are ready to stop gambling and start healing. So if you've ever found yourself stuck in a cycle of chasing, overspending, or telling yourself just one more, this episode will speak to you. Rob, welcome to the Collector's Compass. So great to have you.
Thank you, man. That was awesome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the introduction. And yeah, excited to talk about the topic. Appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Well, we're going to dive right into your origin story, from daily gambling to daily recovery. So let's start at the beginning. What did a typical day in your life look like during the height of your gambling addiction? You've talked
Mhm.
about gambling for, 6 to 8 hours a day. What did that do to your mindset, your relationships, and your sense of self?
Yeah, I wish it was 6 to 8 hours a day. There were a large amount of days where it was upwards of 10 to 12 hours, man. It was all consuming. And so like basically I started off with these small sports bets, but by the peak of the addiction, a day in my life, it looked like waking up not early, like don't get me wrong, it wasn't like I was waking up early because I was stayed up so late looking at bets from the night before. So I would wake up at like 10, 11 in the morning. I was in college for most of it, so I picked like my classes to be in the afternoons so that I could sleep in. And I'd wake up and I'd look at my phone in a panic right away. Like a lot of people, I guess, wake up to an alarm, which is like that jolt or that panic. But for me, it was the alarm. Then it was looking to see if I was broke or I was rich, quote unquote. And so what it was checking on bets that I'd placed the night before on, Asian basketball, Eastern European tennis. Sometimes if it was a weekend, I guess it could have been European soccer, like the Premier League, things like people would actually know, La Liga,
Right.
stuff like that. But for the most part, it was on pretty obscure things. And I'd wake up and I'd usually lose. And so I would immediately start my day with this feeling of like, I have to win this money back. So I'd get up, I'd go sit on the toilet, I'd start spinning slots to try to chase the money back while I was checking lines for the afternoon games if it was a weekend or for the early evening games. So NBA, MLB, if it was a weekday. And basically, it was why I call it 10 to 12 hours a day is because even though I maybe wasn't sitting there hitting a slot for 12 hours a day, I was looking at lines, I was thinking about where to get money, I was watching games, and sometimes I'd just straight up skip class to research games because I thought that would help me win more money. So a
Right.
day in my life by that point was just this all-consuming cycle of chasing my losses.
Well said. And what you're talking about, I think a lot of our community can resonate, from the traditional gambling to the chasing sports cards and everything else we talk about at Collectors MD. This sort of behavior is, very consistent with what we're seeing, in our weekly meetings, in our group
Mhm.
chats and discords. There are just so many people that are struggling with this addiction and insidious behavior, and they don't know how to sort of get themselves out of these cycles, these dopamine loops. And quite often it's happening subconsciously. And so for you, like, there was that moment where things just changed. Can you take us into that point when you finally decided, I can't live like this anymore?
Sure. I think that a lot of people who quit gambling will have some kind of major event, and that major event will basically lead to this conclusion of like, I have no other options. Gambling has defeated me. I need to get help. Um, that was sort of what I felt, but more what I felt was this like moment where I like became conscious of what I was doing. So what I realized was for the 6 years that I was gambling compulsively, I was doing it out of sheer habit. It's like I never thought about an alternative. I never thought like, hey, I'm down money. Let me, you know, better my education so I can get a better job to pay that money back fast. No, it was like I'm down money, I gotta go win it back. I'm up money, I gotta win more. it was always like a reason to keep gambling. And so
Right.
November 12th, 2022, I had gotten a couple of months away from gambling by this point because, I'd had one of those moments where I lost everything. And I was like, I need to stop. But I wasn't ready to actually stop. And so the morning of November the 12th, 2022, I place a sports bet and it wins. But I feel really guilty because I had been going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings, I had been seeking out help, and I had a relapse. And so I tried to get the money out and self-exclude to ban myself from playing on that site, but they had this policy where it was like, if you made an ACH deposit, you couldn't take an ACH withdrawal until it cleared. And so I had to wait, according to them, until the next day to be able to withdraw the money. That was
Right.
never gonna make it, of course. So I said, you know what, that's unacceptable. I know if I keep this money in here, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna go to their partner casino and I'm going to reason with them at the cashier's desk. Then they're going to pay me my money there. I'm gonna Uber back home and I'm gonna quit. So I go to the casino, which is a great idea. Good job, Rob. And I say, listen, I want this money out. I want to self-exclude. I want to quit. And they're like, listen, it's our company policy. We can't let you take this money out until the next day.
Right.
So I was like, whatever. And I turn around to like walk out to go home. And lo and behold, I'm in a casino. I'm 1 hour clean, not 8 months clean. And I say, well, I'm up X amount of dollars. If I lose that amount, then it's like nothing ever happened anyway. My bet date's today no matter what I do. So I might as well go and gamble a little bit. And that led to a 12-hour gambling binge where I'd put myself into debt for the next 6 months, working 80 hours per week. The loss isn't what got me to stop. You'd ask me what got me to finally stop. There's this thought that I had about 6 or 7 hours into it where I had basically taken out cash advances. So I was holding a lump of money in my pocket as loose bills, more than I had ever had in my whole life. And it was with my phone. Went to grab my phone to probably check on a bet. Who knows why I was going to grab my phone. And the money fell out on the floor when I took the phone out of my pocket. And I was freaking out. I was scrambling, trying to pick everything up. I was worried that people had seen me. I was going to get robbed, that I had left some money on the ground. Some wind blew some away. Like I was just thinking about everything so fast.
Sure. Yeah.
When I was confident that I picked everything up, I like took a breath and I started to like laugh. And the reason that I was laughing like a crazy person, not just like a little giggle, but like a full-on crazy person laugh. The reason that I was doing it was because I had this thought, and this is the thought that answers your question. Just throw the money back on the floor. Because if you throw the money back on the floor, someone else might leave with it. But if you keep that money, you will always gamble it away in the end. And so what I realized at that point was I was gambling because I didn't think about it. When I stopped to think, why am I gambling? I didn't have an answer anymore that made sense. And that's the point at which I thought I was done. And I am.
Yeah. I mean, so many of us have had that sort of rock bottom moment or that sort of, epiphany where like we take a step back and we almost see ourselves from a higher place. And it's a realization that what we're doing isn't just about chasing your losses or trying to become rich, right? A lot of it has to do with our identity, with chasing validation, with chasing that dopamine high. And it becomes so much bigger from an emotional and mental standpoint. As far as, the root of the addiction goes, it's just all consuming, right?
Oh, totally. I saw this video the other day and it was this series on like this guy and his roommate, and basically he wanted to condition his roommate to be afraid of the word cardboard. And so in the first 4 videos, every time he says the word cardboard, he dumps a bucket of water on his friend. And now the 5th time he just yells cardboard and his friend like runs and turns away, but he doesn't dump any water. So it was just like he basically classical conditioned his friend to be afraid of that word. And the more I think about it, it was like whether it was the casino doing it or whether it was me doing it, I was conditioned to think that I had to gamble. And I felt like if I didn't do it, something was going to go horribly wrong. Life was wrong for some reason. I was doing the wrong things with my time. I was suboptimal, inefficient, unproductive, whatever you want to call it. when in reality, like, that wasn't the case at all. But my brain truly believed that if I wasn't gambling, I was wasting my time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you brought up another sort of theme that I think a lot of us have experienced where you put yourself in a vulnerable position, like going into a casino, and in your mind you're just telling yourself, I'm going to collect my winnings, walk away, and that's going to be that. But once you put yourself in that sort of environment where your subconscious is going to take over, you're setting yourself up for risk, right? And so I've experienced that myself where, during the throes of my addiction with traditional gambling, I had self-excluded. And then, after the, period ended, I was under the impression that I had to go in person into like the offices in Trenton in order to remove myself from the exclusion list. And so I wasn't even thinking about it. And then out of the blue, I received an email from one of the casinos that, I used to frequent. And they tell me that, they have this amazing deposit match opportunity. And if I deposited $1,000, they would match it instantly. And they always seem to find you when you're like feeling the most vulnerable. Or
and that should be illegal, but
it's not by coincidence. It's definitely by design. Just a little sidebar. And, I was in marketing and advertising for about 13 years before I launched Collectors MD. And so I understand the nuances and the ins and outs of marketing and advertising and things like keyword targeting, where every time you download an app, let's call it Instagram, there are terms and conditions that most people just breeze through just so that they can start using the app. Within those terms and conditions, you're basically agreeing to allow your phone, your device, to activate the microphone while you are actively using that app. And even once you exit the app, they could still pick up keywords for about 30 to 60 seconds, right? So quite often people will be talking about whatever they're experiencing that day. Maybe they're in an argument with their spouse or partner. Maybe they're talking about their losses in a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, something of that nature. And then suddenly you receive a targeted ad on social media or an email from one of the casinos or sports books that you used to use frequently. And all of a sudden you're in this like vulnerable moment where like you just, got out of a GA meeting and you're maybe feeling a little bit down on yourself, or you got into an argument with somebody and they, right then and there, they hit you with that opportunity to mitigate all of those feelings by going back to the same behavior that got you in the situation to begin with. So anyway, I was targeted one of these emails, and they sucked me in, and this was like a year plus after not gambling. And my mind started to race, my heart started to pound, and I was like, screw it, I'm just gonna give it a shot. And I'm only gonna play with the money that they are adding as part of the bonus. But of course, there are all those fine print terms where you have to play through the funds 25x, and if you're playing blackjack, it's like a multiplier, so it's like really 100 or 1,000x, and it's just unrealistic for you to be able to play through whatever you're depositing. And so I deposited the $1,000 and they matched it. I go to enter the live blackjack and it won't let me in. I'm like, what the heck? So I email their customer support, and it turns out that they actually still had my account suspended, but only within like the live games. So like I could still play like other games, but I couldn't play live blackjack. And so I couldn't just not play, but the money that I just deposited was now basically stuck within the app, because as a part of that sort of suspension, they restricted me from being able to withdraw. So I couldn't even take the money out. And so still to this day, that $1,000 is still with that casino. I mean, I fought tooth and nail to try to get it back, but like, they bait and switched me. And, what did that lead to? Obviously I felt like that tilt, and, started to think about ways that I can get that $1,000 back. And I just went to another app and deposited another $1,000 and said, I got to win it back. And it, obviously led to a downward spiral, but that's one of the many things we see in this industry or in this space where people just get sucked into these dopamine cycles and they can't find a way out. And once they start losing, they start chasing losses. And the only way to continue in that heat of the moment is to just continue digging yourself deeper and deeper. And again, I just think so many people can relate to that feeling of just rock bottom or just being in the lowest of lows. And so when the problem's too big to ignore, but you don't know how to stop, what did early recovery actually look like for you during those, let's call it, first 30 days?
Sure. And before I answer that, before it just leaves my head, I wanted to make one more point on the advertising. I ran this like billboard campaign in Philadelphia recently where I put up these billboards and said, scan this if you just lost your parlay. It did decently well relative to the size of my like site, but what I really found interesting was the guy that sold me the billboards, he's a friend of mine. He asked me if I wanted to geotag the billboard. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what is that? And he explained to me that if someone in my target demographic, I could define it, walks past the physical billboard, then they would start getting direct advertising on their social media feed. And so if you think about where gambling ads are located, they're located everywhere, but theoretically, it opens up the opportunity to put it next to places where the most vulnerable people would be. They could put it outside of a high school. They could put it outside of a college. They could put it outside of a Planned Parenthood. They could put it outside of a homeless shelter. Like there's so many places you could put a gambling ad and then have it geotag where people are now getting advertisements that are actually within this most vulnerable demographic. And I just thought that was like so crazy. But
yeah, it's by design. It's by design. It's very, very dangerous.
Yeah. But so early recovery, the day that I stopped gambling, I was broke. And so what it looked like in the beginning was just absolute chaos and confusion. I was like, how do I pay this money back? What do I do? It doesn't feel like I can. Like it was just kind of this uncertainty leading to panic, leading to anxiety. And so I had to slow down and I had to think like, okay, money-wise, what do I do? I had to tell my family, hey, I messed up again. I need you guys to help me with my money. Not give me money, but control the bank account so that when I would have a temptation to gamble, I couldn't just access it right away. So, not that it made me the sexiest man alive or anything like that, but I had my mom controlling my bank account for the first year and a half that I'd quit gambling. And I thought that would be like the worst thing in the world, but really all it did was just add some friction to the process when I would have urges. So It ended up being fine. Then I self-excluded from every place that I'd played just to make it a little bit more difficult. Of course, with a self-exclusion and similar to like what your core audience probably understands, no matter what you do, no matter what friction you put in place, there's always access. And so all it is giving yourself that little bit of time in between the thought and the action. And that can make a big difference. It did in my journey. So self-exclusion didn't cure me, but it made it a little bit harder to gamble. Third, I started going to support group meetings more regularly. So for me, that was Gamblers Anonymous. And that was something that I'd done before, but something that I stopped doing right before I started to have thoughts of relapsing. And then the big thing for me, which is kind of like to describe what a day in the life was like, I had to find a sense of purpose. I had to find something to do that made me feel like I was contributing. Because for the 6 years I was gambling, I did like minor little volunteer things, but for the most part, it was for a resume. It was to go to a college. It was to look better. The only thing that I did during that 6 years that I was like proud of was I did Special Olympics. Like I volunteered with them. Love that entire organization. But everything else was just surface level to look like I was a good person. And so when I quit, and I was going back to the meetings, someone pretty close in age to me stopped showing up. And if your audience is familiar with what a GA meeting, a Gamblers Anonymous meeting looks like, the stereotype is that it's a very old demographic. And that was the case in my meeting, minus me and this other guy that's in his early 30s. And so when he stopped showing up, I was like, oh, damn, like I'm the youngest person here by like 2 times longer than I've been alive. Let me figure out where this guy went that I'm friends with, give him a call. And so I called him and I said, listen, man, like what's going on? Why aren't you in the meeting? He had a relapse. He'd gone back to it. And I said, you don't want to make the same mistakes with your life that I just made with mine. I'm about to clock in for my second shift of the day. I'm paying back this debt. It's going to take me 6 months. Don't do the same thing. He came back into the meeting. And from that day until today, I don't think he's placed a bet. And that made me feel like I was contributing, like I was helping someone on their journey, like I was doing something for someone else that wasn't me for no reason other than to just be a good person. And I said,
Right.
wow, that's awesome. Let me put that, I'm going to record the same thing. I'm going to put it on YouTube and everyone's going to watch it. And then like everyone's going to be cured from gambling addiction. And so I did. And, similar to what we were talking about before we jumped on the call, my first video got 4 views in the first month that it was out. And 2 of them were myself. One of them was my mom and one was my girlfriend. Actually, it had 5. There was one burner account that watched it. Thank you, whoever that was. And I was like, yeah, this is awful. Like, this is not my purpose. This is not it. Whatever. I'm just going to quit. I'm just going to keep trying different things to find out what works for me. And my girlfriend goes, hey, your videos sucked. And I was like, oh, like, thanks. She said, it's because you sounded like a douche. You're trying to sound like a doctor, but you're not. Why don't you just be more yourself? Put it on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, whatever. TikTok's that app for like the kids that do their dance trends. Like, that's not me. Whatever. She said, just do it. Stop being like that. Just do it. And so I recorded myself in the drive-thru of a Dunkin' Donuts talking about how roulette's not actually a 50-50 game. Something that I thought was like rather obvious, but apparently it wasn't. It got 1.2 million views in the first week. And I was like, wow, this is the best app ever. I love this app. Going from 4 views to 1.2 million is a dopamine high, but it also was validation that this topic has an audience. And so from that day until now, what my life has become, what my daily life is my full-time job is now creating content about my gambling addiction story and interviewing other people like yourself about their experience, putting it online, sharing stories, just to help other people avoid going down the same path with their life that I did with mine. So long story short, my day is spent recording things. Somehow I went from making TikToks in my mom's basement to being, I guess, like a documentarian filmmaker. I don't know how this happened, but we're here.
Yeah. I mean, that's an incredible story, Rob. I mean, very similar to what I'm doing with Collectors MD, just sort of in a adjacent lane, with collecting, which we've talked about in the past. Has a lot of similarities as far as the mechanics and the dopamine loops are concerned to traditional gambling. But you know what? Somebody like you or somebody like me has basically done is we've taken our biggest weakness, right? And we've turned it into our best asset. Yeah. And we're not just actively trying to better ourselves, we're trying to help other people. And I love that you kind of had that moment, that self-reflection moment where somebody in your GA room who wasn't showing up, you reached out, see how they were doing, and you basically walked them off the ledge, and that sort of gave you that realization, that strength to acknowledge and realize, like, I can do this, and help people across the board, not just one person or not just myself. And that's what it's all about, man. Yeah. We can't heal alone. We can't heal in isolation. We have to heal in group.
Yeah. If we wanted to better ourselves, man, you'd be doing pack rips right now, and I would be spinning slots on a stream. Like, the number of times I'll get a comment like, oh, you're just doing this for the money. It's huge money, man. Yeah. Talking about not gambling is really, really profitable. Everyone should do it. But yeah, 100%, man.
You did bring up something that I'd be remiss not to touch on, and that is the sort of dopamine hit you get from validation through social media, right? You mentioned going from 4 views to 1.2 million on TikTok, and you've experienced that same sort of dopamine. So I want people to understand, those that are listening, that just because you aren't gambling anymore, and you're doing something maybe more productive or creating content that's bettering society, that's all great, but make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, not just to sort of replace that dopamine high with another activity. And that's something I've sort of had to process and figure out as I've built Collectors MD over the last 8 months or so. I can't get caught up in the number of views and the validation from people. I mean, I'll be honest, like, I've never gotten so much validation in my entire life. I mentioned I was in advertising sales for 13 years. Like, I had a pretty successful career. I did pretty well for myself. I sold a lot of 6-figure, 7-figure deals to, advertising partners representing a variety of different publishers and companies that I worked for over the years. I got a few pats on the back, maybe from the boss or somebody on my team. Maybe they rang the bell in the office. But just in terms of like the true impact that I'm making, I've never felt more accomplished and validated in my life now with everything that I'm doing with Collectors MD. So
Yeah.
again, like, I just want to make sure that our audience understands that we aren't doing these things for, you know, the dopamine that comes with that.
Right.
We're doing these things because we understand the severity of a lot of these issues as it pertains to addiction
Right.
and the fallout that comes with that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that an important point to kind of like hammer that home is like a lot of YouTubers will be like, oh my God, I hit 100,000 subscribers. Oh my God, I hit 1 million subscribers. And of course, that's the goal when you're posting content. You want it to reach as many people as possible. And there's certainly pride to be had. There's certainly a sense of accomplishment. But in our case, if we reach 100,000 subscribers, or when we reach 100,000 subscribers, when we reach 1 million subscribers, it's because 100,000 people are struggling. It's because 1 million people are struggling. And so even though there's validation, even though there's dopamine in making better content, having it reach more people and viewing it as a challenge to keep getting better, it's grounding in the sense that our growth is only happening because so many people are struggling. Like,
Right.
people don't watch like how to quit gambling videos for fun, right? Like, let's just be honest. People don't watch my videos for fun.
Right.
Almost none of them. Some of them are like vaguely entertainment because they're podcasts and stories, but I would say like 95% of the viewership is people that gamble in a way or know someone that gambles in a way that's bad.
Right.
And so like that's a grounding sense. It's like if I was just ripping like lava melts block of ice and got 10 million views on it, I'd probably feel a lot different than I would getting 10 million views on a video about my story.
100%. I totally agree there. All right. I do want to just take a quick moment in between segments here to show everybody your website.
Sure.
One Day at a Time, Gambling Awareness. Rob puts out some incredible content. Some of it, you know, is sort of acting where, you know, Rob basically plays the role of old Rob, right? And he shows what a day in the life looked like for a gambling addict for himself before he started One Day at a Time, Gambling Awareness. And he posts some incredible content on here. I definitely encourage you guys to check out that content. He has a podcast that I've been on, resources. He partners with a lot of the same sort of organizations that we do at Collectors MD. So we'll get into a little bit of that in a bit. But again, if you want to check out this website, it's ODAAT, ODAAT, gamblingawareness.com. And yeah, of course, you can learn more about Rob and his story.
Yeah, man. It's really interesting that you point to the content that's basically like more acting. I was having a rough day yesterday. I texted you. I was like, I gotta reschedule because we were supposed to go live yesterday.
Right.
I was just feeling down. Like nothing particularly bad happened. It just felt like, you know, a downhill slope of negative events. And so I was like, I need to make sure that I'm making content that makes me feel fulfilled, because it can sometimes feel like I'm checking boxes, sometimes feel like formulaic in creating. And those videos are my absolute favorite to make. The short films that are either acting or like being the version of myself that I used to be to kind of illustrate it. And I wrote one idea down yesterday, and it's going to be this like cinematic short film breaking down like preconceived gambling excuses in the style of like this guy that does these TikToks where he like cooks and he like gives like these philosophical statements. I'll send you one after, but essentially like it would be like this. You know, one version of me talking to another version of me. I'm acting because I don't have any friends that want to act in my video, so I'll be both characters. And it'll be like, dude, like I just hit big. Like I'm gonna stop after I get to $10,000. And then the other side's gonna be like, oh, well, remember the last time you got to $10,000? And it's gonna be like a flashback. And then it's gonna show like it'll be like 3 minutes long, but it's gonna be the story of the mistakes that I used to make acted out so that people can see themselves in what's happening. Because I think like if I sit here and I dictate, which I do sometimes, and I'm like, you know, this is how you stop. Here's the 4 steps to stop. It can feel like it's about me and not about their experience. And so I want to bring it to life with a couple of these kind of short films. So thank you for highlighting that. It's my favorite thing.
Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that type of content really resonates with people because it allows them to put themselves in, you know, the same shoes, right? And see what you're illustrating from the same perspective. And it's very relatable. I mean, a lot of us have experienced those very moments, and sometimes they're internal where, you know, you're not actually speaking, it's voices in your head. and you're constantly battling with that devil on your shoulder, or the conscience that wants to rip the wheel away from you and drive you down degenerate highway, right? So
100%.
it is definitely refreshing to see. And again, like we absolutely look up to you, and everything that you're doing is like a benchmark of how to relate to people and reach an audience, to spread positive awareness and educate the masses. And so that's a good segue to our next segment, which is the one day at a time movement, sort of building a platform for recovery. And so let's talk about your movement. You've built this platform that's equal parts honesty, education, and hope. And so I'm curious, what made you start it, and what message were you trying to put out there? And I know you already sort of explained that moment that made you realize, like, I got to put stuff out there. But at what point did you decide, all right, I'm putting out videos, this is getting a lot of traction, I'm now going to formulate it into like a full-fledged movement?
Yeah. I think it came really from the start. I approached the whole thing as like a gambling addict, like in the worst possible way that I think I could have approached it. So when I saw that video did like 1.2, 1.3 million, whatever it ended up at, I was like, okay, I need to post every single day, and I'm going to post every single day, and I'm going to grow this to be a full-time thing. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know where funding is going to come from. I don't know who it's going to reach, or what particularly it's going to be about, other than being about gambling addiction.
Right.
But I'm going to do it. And hey, mom and dad, I just quit my job. I'm moving back home, and I'm going to make videos every day.
Yep.
That went as well as you might have expected it to go in the beginning.
Sure.
And what I said basically was like, this is working. This is going to reach people. Like, give me some time. And so we came to this agreement that I had a year. I could live at home for a year, and I had to turn a profit in the business, and the business being like just the channel itself, the movement itself, as you call it. And if I didn't, I had to go to law school, because I had been taking the LSAT at the time. I had been preparing to go, and I really didn't want to go to law school. And I said, no problem. I'm gonna make this into a business in a year. And somehow, some way, I did. My main like point of moral contention was like, I never want to charge my audience anything, because I remember like when I first quit, I was in 6 months of debt, right? Why do I expect someone will be able to pay for something? I can't. And so it became really difficult. The channel was originally called Rob ODAAT, so Rob One Day at a Time. And it was all about me and my story. It was like, let me tell you what happened to me. I'm sitting in a car going through what we just went through for the first 15 minutes of this live. And basically just spamming videos about gambling myths, about things that I did when I was gambling. Like, the content didn't have a strong focus, but what it did do was kind of change the space in a way. So not that I think the space is very large. So when I say this, don't think like I have a big head, because I think it's an incredibly small niche in like social media in general, is gambling addiction awareness. But up until the point that I started making these TikToks, everything was a podcast, and everything was like at least an hour long. So it was these people having conversations, some of them great conversations, but it wasn't structured in a way to reach a larger audience, unless that audience was very specifically seeking out gambling addiction content. And so what I thought the hole in the market was there's all this gambling content telling you this is the best thing in the world. There's this gambling addiction content of a couple people telling you this is the worst thing in the world. Why can we not get these two things to show up in the same feed? Like, someone who's gambling is not going to find the gambling addiction content, because the algorithms are serving them content about gambling. So I started to make these videos where I was like reacting to, or almost like acting out gambling, so that it would show up alongside regular gambling content. And that's what's gotten the channel to grow. I didn't position myself as the gambling addiction page. I positioned myself as the guy who's gambling the wrong way. And then it was a gambling addiction page, and it was a place to get resources, but that's how it started. And then I rebranded probably about a year ago now to be ODAAT Gambling Awareness, first went through a thing called ODAAT recovery. Then I realized I live 15 minutes away from a place called ODAAT recovery. So there was a little bit of an issue with that.
Yeah.
And so I changed to ODAAT gambling awareness with the intention of bringing in other people's stories. And
Right.
so the movement, the channel itself has like a couple of focuses. The first being any kind of content to get more eyes on the fact that gambling addiction exists. So that's that same idea of how can I show up alongside gambling content. Then it's stories. So gambling stories of like, this is someone who lost everything. This is someone whose family was destroyed. This is someone who lost their house. Like these kinds of stories bring in a really wide viewership for not always the right reason, but no matter who you are, if you're seeing the video, it's making a positive impact. Because if you ever are struggling, now you know where to go. And then
Absolutely.
the third part is like direct help. So it's basically, if you are on this page and you've watched a couple of videos and you're showing interest, there's a decent chance you have a problem. Here's how to get better. And so that's usually the lowest viewed videos, but it's the ones that are at the bottom of the funnel that people that genuinely need the help now know
Right.
where to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so overall, like I did end up making it into a business. I support myself full time with sponsorships, with not really from the ad revenue, as I kind of joked at earlier, but it's mainly from sponsorships. And the idea being like, there's not a ton of people talking about this issue. There's more now than there was 2 years ago. But I think that anyone making content and properly categorizing it about gambling addiction, collecting addiction, anything related to prediction markets, trading addiction, within the next 5 years, there's going to be such a high volume of search traffic heading towards these
Right.
topics that you will see growth as long as you don't absolutely suck. And so I'm
Yeah.
not a professional filmmaker, but I don't absolutely suck, and I've been seeing growth.
Yeah, that's all wonderful, and there's just so many synergies between what we're both doing. Me with Collectors MD, you with ODAAT Gambling Awareness, and I feel the same way. I have zero intention to ever charge my audience, my community, my members. I last thing I want to do is exploit anybody for money. After or while they're going through such challenging financial times. And so I really, really respect that. There are other ways that you can monetize and make a movement like this sustainable so that you can actually keep the lights on and provide for your family, et cetera, et cetera. People understand that, and I think are empathetic to that.
I think, but I think that one thing that would give people like a really strong reason to respect you and the work that you're doing is when you talk about like the initial monetization of the movement in general. So like you're probably gonna experience the exact same thing.
Mhm.
As you get growth on the channel, you're now in a position where your biggest possible sponsors are groups that are maybe treatment centers, maybe they're like mental health apps. And so you can't get paid per referral to these sources. Like if you got paid $500 every time you sent someone to a treatment center, you'd be in jail because it's called patient brokering. So what you
Right.
have to do to survive as a business is you have to give like a reasonable explanation as to why someone should pay you a monthly marketing retainer to send to run ads about their program on your channel.
Right.
And until you have results, you're basically like begging someone to believe in you. And that's why
Right.
it's so difficult to monetize it first. Once you have results, you can say, for my other client, I did XYZ. But in the beginning, you're
100%.
like, please give me money so I can keep making videos or I'll go bankrupt.
Right. No, I hear you, man. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. Like we've recently partnered with the Problem Gambling Coalition of Colorado, PGCC. They franchise Collectors MD and now host weekly meetings called Unboxed, powered by Collectors MD, every Thursday night. And we're working on doing more of the same with other coalitions and organizations at the state level. We're partnering with a variety of different professional tools, resources. We have a partnership in place with Gamban, about right choice recovery, Birch's Health. We're talking to Gamfin. I actually have a call this afternoon with Sam from eVive, who I've been talking to over the last month or so. I know you used to work with them. And so, yeah, we're doing everything we possibly can to, work with the right individuals, right organizations who sort of have the same principles and mantras and are all about bettering ourselves and the community and all of those things. But it's also important to note that somebody like me or you, we have made complete 180 pivots in terms of our career trajectory, and so it can be very challenging early on to find success, from a monetary standpoint. And so yeah,
To find
worth
survival.
mentioning. Yeah,
Yeah.
survival. I mean,
It's not even success, because again, you'd be running pack reps, you'd be running openings, like that kind of stuff, if you wanted to make a bunch of money. It's just like getting enough money to cover your costs is the
exactly.
initial hump.
Yeah. So we kind of touched on this already, but one thing that really stands out is how practical your content is, right? It's not just about motivation or creating these sort of staged videos of you talking to yourself and acting and things like that. It's also about the tools and routines. And you mentioned the bottom of the funnel content. And you're featuring partnerships with a handful of organizations that Collectors MD is also working with. I mentioned Right Choice, Gamban, Gamfin. And so how did those collaborations come together, especially early on?
Yeah. Gamban was one of out of that group, Gamban's the earliest one. So I've had partners in the past that I no longer work with, just because like people change their focus so often, people change who they're affiliated with so often, that things are kind of hectic. But
Right,
the
I get
very
it.
first groups were Stop Predatory Gambling. They believed in me in the beginning. And then Alchemist was the first treatment center that I worked with. Or actually, that's not true. Prescott House was, then it was Alchemist, and now it's Right Choice Recovery. And when I went to talk to Rob at Right Choice Recovery, um, I basically had years of data as to why it would be a good idea to work with me. So it became a pretty easy partnership to get in. And what it is with them is, of course, just making all the content for their social media, growing their channels, with the
Right.
goal of being building brand authority, the same way that I tried to do with ODAAT gambling awareness.
Right.
With Gamban, I remember reaching out to Matt and Jack. They're the co-founders of Gamban,
Yep.
and I basically said like, "Hey, I have this marketing platform, so to speak, where I could run ads about Gamban." And they actually said to me, "Hey, we like what you're doing so much. We actually don't want you to run ads about us at all. We're just going to pay you what you ask, and just mention us in a nice way." And I was
Wow.
like, well, "Oh my God, like you guys are the best." And now we've
Yeah.
moved into a more formal podcast sponsorship. Matt and I have become pretty close, and we're looking at building a foundation here in the United States to try to put
Yep.
out counter messaging, and we're going to call them anti-gambling ads, but in reality, they're just anti the industry, not gambling itself. Um,
Interesting.
and then with Gamfin, I met them at conferences. Alyx and Jim are the two that kind of run Gamfin. So Alyx started it. Jim's kind of in charge of growth and kind of reaching out to new audiences now. And Alyx started it in a really interesting way. I know I'm off on a little tangent now. Alyx started it in a
Oh,
really
you're good.
interesting way. So Gamfin provides counseling services, financial counseling services to people who are struggling. Usually it's for free because they do it through a state agency. And
Right.
he was an engineer, and he was building financial tools online. And he realized that there was this like gap in the market of financial education software. And so he was pitching banks, and then he was running their trainings on like financial education. And then like they were all talking about gambling, and he's like, "Oh, like this tool could be used for gambling to help gamblers who are struggling." And they were like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh, okay, that sounds really cool. Let me let me sell this service to gamblers instead." And then he brought in Jim, who's a long time recovery guy, really cool guy, probably the most interesting person that I've met in the space. And they've really grown this thing. I think they're in like 30 states now. So it's a long running partnership with them as well. But there's so many of these like groups that are just trying to find their footing in the United States, and there's not a ton of funding to go around. And
Right.
so what they're all looking for is like this grassroots style of marketing, which is perfect. That's why they're coming to me and not a giant marketing firm to take care of these projects, because
Right.
they're not looking to spend $1 million, as you said, 6-7 figure deals to do marketing packages. They're looking to reach the audience that I have, which is
Right.
people struggling with gambling that need the help that they offer.
Right. Yeah. And that's all incredible. It's obviously understandable why they would approach somebody like you. You put out great content. You're doing some amazing things from a content standpoint with Right Choice. And as you know, I work closely with Right Choice, leading group meetings there on Monday and Tuesday evenings, and know Rob very well. I'm a graduate from their program, and it's been empowering and rewarding to be on the other side to sort of give back and provide my lived experience and just anecdotes, all the nuances, everything that I've gone through personally to sort of help other people who are currently in the early stages of addiction. So we'll definitely touch base off camera about some of these partnerships, because a few of them, like Gamban, we've been trying to get in front of, obviously with collecting and the sports card hobby specifically. There's just a lot of education and awareness that needs to happen. A lot of these folks already are aware of what's going on and the synergies. But, we're still in sort of the early stages of getting people to fully understand how something like a childhood hobby rooted in nostalgia can have so many connections and similarities to something like traditional casino or, sports book betting. So I do want to keep us on track, because we are already at 47 minutes, which is great. And we can go as long as you're able to. But my next question for you is, you also have that first day trying to stop gambling playlist on your channel. And I think it serves as a lifeline for people who are just starting out in their recovery journeys. And so what advice do you give someone on day one of their journey?
Yeah. So I think what the playlist is, like the first 7 days, right? Is it that one that you're talking about? Yeah. So the first 7 days, basically what I wanted to accomplish with that playlist, and it's crazy that you've seen it, because it's like one of the least viewed things on the channel, because again, it's like the direct help kind of video. What I wanted to do was put myself back in the shoes of myself the morning that I woke up after I had had my relapse. So I think that day one is actually so much easier than day like 90. And the reason that I say that is because most people's day one comes on the back of like some negative event, right? For me, it was losing more money than I had, and I was in debt for the next 6 months. Like, you're gonna wake up feeling like crap. You're gonna wake up with regrets and guilt, but you're not really gonna gamble because you're out of money. And so, by the point that people usually pursue recovery, this is the case. And so, what a lot of the thoughts on day one are reframing guilt and reframing shame to be weapons for change rather than something that's just dragging you down. And what I mean by that is, like, you're going to wake up and you're going to be like, I can't believe I did that. I wish I stopped at when I was at X amount. I shouldn't have just kept going. That was such a stupid thing to do. Okay. Yeah, sure. And you could sit there all day and be sad about it, but it was a stupid thing to do. Don't do it again. So how do we not do it again? We write down exactly what happened, why certain things happen, and then try to figure out, how can I plug something in between the trigger and the action? So, like,
Right.
all right, when I went to that casino on the last day, why did I go to that casino? Why did I place a bet in the morning? I felt purposelessness. I felt bored. So theoretically, from a bird's eye view, it wasn't, let me feel guilty about gambling for the last 12 hours yesterday. It's, why did I feel bored in the morning? And then it was, when I was at the casino, I was, why did I take a cash advance? Because I had access to the money. I had access to the credit card. So if I didn't have access to my money, I couldn't have done the next thing in that step. So use the guilt, use the shame as a motivator to try to reframe the problem and learn from what you just did. Because if you sit there and you feel bad for yourself, you're just going to go back and gamble. Because if you sit there and you're like, man, I can't believe I did that. I'm so broke right now. I just lost all my money. The only thought's going to be this overwhelming idea that you have to get everything back right away. There's no value in that, because you're not going to do it. And even if you did do it, all wins are just future losses. And so on day 100%, it's about reframing the shame to be a motivator rather than something you just beat yourself up about.
Yeah. Really well said, Rob. And, I think you bring up a great point. Taking that time to pause is so pivotal. It's so critical when you're in the thick of it. If you can, create a friction, I think was the word you used earlier, a distraction of some sort. We talk about this a lot, in our weekly meetings, and at Right Choice is something called urge surfing, which when you get that urge, to be able to compartmentalize it and slow down so that you can give yourself the opportunity to think about the consequences. Think about
Yeah.
what you're doing. And when you have the ability to be able to pause and redirect your mind and the urge itself, it can be so incredibly powerful, not just for that moment, but for future moments, because it gives you that sense of confidence to know, well, I did it once before, I could do it again, right?
Mhm.
And it's not just the urges, it's in the moment when you're actually, participating in the behavior where you're down a ton of money or you spent a fortune on cards, and the only way to feel better in that moment is to continue the behavior again, digging yourself deeper and deeper, because as long as there's that sliver of hope, if you will, that you could potentially make that money back on the next spin or the next bet or the next pack of cards, it drives that side of your brain again to just continue the action. But
And you're
again,
getting
once
at you're getting at
yeah,
a
go
point
ahead.
that's like really why I stopped saying I stopped telling people to quit gambling. So this is as weird as that sounds. In the beginning, my platform was like, gambling is bad, it did bad things to me. You need to quit too before it does bad things to you. That led to you just didn't open enough packs. You just didn't take enough bets. You didn't do enough spins. Like just do one more and it'll solve the problem.
Right.
And so to someone who's still in that mindset of like the next one is going to solve the problem, you're not going to get them to quit by telling them that things went bad for you. The entire point of the platform that I have now is to get people to realize what they're doing. Because if that person stops and thinks like, you know what? Yeah, I might get the money back on the next pack, but then I'm going to want another pack anyway.
Of course.
And then I'm going to want another bet anyway. Then it doesn't matter if you win the money back. That's
Right.
what's missing. Like you will win some money if you gamble, but you will always lose more. That's the
In the
point
long
that
run.
until you get to that point, you're not going to
There
stop.
there is no end game card or end game, bet or, jackpot win that is going to stop the behavior altogether. As a matter of fact, you could win that jackpot and be $1 million richer the next day. That doesn't change the cycle. It doesn't change the undying urge that will eventually come back. It's relentless. You think in the moment, oh, I'm never going to want to gamble again. I just want all the money. No, like eventually you will get to a point where, life becomes stale, or, you're bored, and, that win is in the rear view. It's something that happened days ago or weeks ago or months ago, and you're just going to want to chase that next dopamine rush. So, it's so critical for people to understand that it's not money they're chasing. It's the dopamine. It's the illusion of having all of the things that you've ever wanted. But those things don't come with gambling, because like Rob is saying, the house will always take it back in the long run, unless you have the wherewithal to pause, take a step back, and remove yourself from the vicious cycle. That's where the real win, if you will come. So I just think what, ODAAT is doing is just so powerful. It's, community driven. People can see themselves in your story and realize there's no shame in starting over, breaking the cycle, bettering themselves. I really admire everything that you're doing and everything that ODAAT stands for. So with that, we're going to transition over to our next segment, which is the overlap. So sort of the gambling psychology within the hobby space, everything that we talk about at Collectors MD. And so you and I have talked a lot about the overlap between gambling and collecting. Again, I was on Rob's podcast over the summer. That episode went live, I think, in the beginning of October. So you can check that out. We'll make sure to link it in the description. But we touched on this quite a bit. And so things like breaks and razzes and repacks and countdown timers and sudden death auctions, these are all things that are built around the same dopamine loop as traditional gambling. And so from your perspective, Rob, what makes these mechanics so dangerous?
Sure. And just to preface, my cat is probably going to just run around behind me. He's admiring the wall right now. But what makes them so like enticing is that it makes you feel different. than your baseline, right? I think that at the end of the day, any addictive process, anything that we're doing for entertainment, anything that we're doing for feeling, it's to just feel different. It's to get to some emotion, some level of feeling that we didn't have before. And so when you're doing something that's adding suspense or momentum to the situation, like a countdown timer, for example, that was a great one to pull. It's just like, why is there a countdown timer? It's to give you this like, oh my God, like something has to happen right now. Something's about to happen. It's this feeling of like, I need to know what's coming next. And it's so engaging because when you have a stake in the game, you're feeling like, oh, the next thing could be like really, really good for me or really bad. But the fact that it could be either keeps you on the edge of your seat. And someone that's experiencing a gambling addiction, which, would you say collecting addiction is slightly different, but it's about the same mechanics.
Exactly.
Someone who's experiencing that is like getting used to this level of thrill, and the thrill is actually coming from the anticipation. So it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Of course, like practically it would in terms of how long you could keep going, but in terms of your ammunition, right? But you're getting addicted to just the feeling of what's going to happen next. And that's the danger of it.
Yeah, really well said. It's that variable reward structure, right? Things like the countdown timers, the random payouts on a jackpot, or like, the near miss, or like, in the world of sports cards, let's say like Jackson Dart for the New York Giants is the chase. Everybody wants his rookie card because he's the hottest quarterback in this class. It's a breaker slowly revealing the card, seeing a Giants helmet, thinking like, oh, it must be Jackson, and then it's some bum lineman. Just that feeling of like near miss, it just feeds into the tilt. It feeds into the desire to just want more, right? We inherently want what we can't have. And so when you miss on a break or a bet and it's a close call, we see it all the time with sports. We're like, a parlay just barely misses because some guy misses a meaningless free throw with like 2 seconds left. Or, a receiver drops a pass that he should have caught. Like those sort of things, again, put us on tilt. Like, there's no tomorrow. And it's these same tactics that we're talking about with collecting and the hobby are the same exact tactics that the casinos and sportsbooks use. So do you think people underestimate how powerful that conditioning is?
Yeah. I mean, I think that everyone has this like idea of like, I'm in control of my thoughts. I'm in control of what I do. And, objectively, you are. You can decide what to do with your thoughts. You are greater than the sum of just what you think. But the conditioning that you get from near miss, from variable reward schedule, it actually creates more dopamine in your brain to lose just by a little bit than it does to win. And so it creates this just implicit challenge in your head. And I think that specifically in like American society, as well as the UK and Australia, which is why I think we see such a high rate of gambling harm in those jurisdictions. Like we have this idea of if we keep doing things over and over again, we're going to get better at them. And I know that exists elsewhere in the world as well. So I'm generalizing, but when it comes to gambling, when it comes to something that you actually have no formal control over, but your brain is desperate to like maintain this pattern that if you keep doing something, you're going to get better at it. You're in control of your actions, but your thoughts are leading you to do things that you otherwise wouldn't do if you stopped and thought about it. So you're like, yeah, I'm continuing to gamble. I can stop anytime that I want. But why are you continuing to gamble? It's because your brain has learned over the course of your life that if you keep doing this thing, eventually you're going to win. Eventually it's going to overcome the odds. You're going to get there. But you're not thinking about it logically. It's like you might overcome the odds once, but then you do it 10 times. So you didn't overcome the odds 9 times and you're in debt now. And so I think that it's really powerful, and it kind of leads people to feel like they're in control, but have this implicit bias that the things they want to control are different than the reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And when I was on your show, I mean, we talked a lot about how the language in the trading card hobby mirrors gambling, right? Like words like hit or chase or jackpot or skunked. It's not subtle at all. And the problem that we see is that the platforms, the manufacturers, the powers that be refuse to acknowledge that, gambling like mechanics are at play here. And they're using the same exact tactics that casinos use. There's no regulation. They refuse to set guardrails or provide their customers with the tools, resources, disclaimers, etc., that is offered within the gambling industry. And I know, we collectively feel like all of those things being offered within the gambling industry are great and all, but it's not enough.
Right.
I
don't even know if it's great.
Think about think about the fact that none of it exists within the world of collecting, within the hobby environment. So, at least there's something. At least when there's a commercial, they acknowledge at the bottom. I know it's very subtle and it's like an afterthought, but at least there's something. None of that exists within the hobby. So I'm curious what advice you would give to collectors who might be in denial about how deep some of these overlaps run.
You can't get someone to stop if they don't want to stop. So what I would try to get that person to do is to come to terms with like their intentions of why they're doing what they're doing, rather than telling them that they have to stop. Because if I tell them that they have to stop doing the thing that they love to do, immediately I'm the bad guy. Immediately there's a need to find a reason that I'm wrong. So it puts us into a combative position.
Right.
Whereas I think that if I tell someone, hey, you do you, hope you're having fun. But is it still fun? And if it's not still fun, like, why are you doing it? And if it is still fun for you, like, do you remember all the times that it wasn't fun, or are you only remembering the times that it's fun so that you can justify continuing? And that doesn't mean that they're going to like go, oh yeah, you're right, you're Buddha or whatever, and I'm going to stop. But it's more like, like, oh shit, okay, well, this guy's kind of wrong right now. But 2 weeks later, and they're like, oh, I just lost a bunch of money. Maybe he had a point. And I think this is evident in my case by like the number of messages that I'll get, to the extent of like, dude, fuck yourself, I hate you. And then 2 weeks later, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I wish I had listened to you. Like, oh yeah, it's all good, man. Didn't change my life, but yeah, I'm here for you. Here's some resources. We see that a lot.
I mean, yeah, things are so much easier said than done, right? You could be the most articulate, eloquent, well-spoken individual who preaches gambling prevention and gambling, harm and things like that. But in recovery, like, everything sort of sounds simple when you say it out loud, right? Things like just take it one day at a time. Don't act on impulse. Focus on progress, not perfection. And all of that is true, but actually living it, doing those things is a whole different story. So when you're in the thick of it, when the urge hits, or when like you start feeling shame, or when life just throws something at you that just knocks the wind out of you, those simple phrases suddenly feel impossible, right? Recovery isn't about knowing what to do. It's about managing the space between knowing and doing. And so that gap is where the real work happens. And so it's easy to just, say something like, just take a deep breath, or just pause until your thoughts start racing. It's easy to say, don't spend your hard-earned money until the dopamine itch actually kicks in. It's easy to say something like, just make sure you stay connected and take it one day at a time, keep coming back to the next meeting, until the last thing you want to do is talk about how you feel, right? And the fact that it's hard, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're only human, and the goal isn't to do it perfectly. It's just to keep trying anyway, even on the days when easier said than done is the, sort of biggest understatement. And so, I just feel like awareness is the most important thing. You can't change what you don't acknowledge, right? And so that's what both ODAAT and Collectors MD are trying to do. It's to help people see the system for what it is before it swallows them whole. Once you can get past that point, you can sort of figure out the ins and outs of actually doing a lot of the things that we're preaching, because I know, again, it's so much easier said than done. So we'll transition over to the next segment now, and that is overspending and impulsive decisions. So like actual guardrails that work. And so I want to get practical for somebody struggling with urges, whether it's gambling or compulsive collecting. What guardrails actually work? Because you mentioned before, and I think this is a really good point, Rob, is that even if you self-exclude, even if you, download Gamban or hand over your finances to a loved one, there is still a way. People still, especially addicts, still find a way. So again, what guardrails actually work to prevent you from doing some of these things, basically protecting yourself from yourself.
Yeah, I still think it's the same guardrails, but I think that the overarching goal has to be to slowly become someone who doesn't want to gamble anymore. And the way that that happens is actually just time away from gambling, which is, it sounds stupid that the cure for gambling addiction is like not gambling, but I think that's actually the case. And so what once again, I find is just finding things to do with your time that mean something to you, to keep yourself busy, to avoid boredom and purposelessness. Turning over access to money to a trusted loved one until you're in a better position, because having access to it can lead to you lighting it on fire, and not having access to it means that you can't light your life on fire. Self-excluding just to make it a little bit more difficult, to add friction, and going to support group meetings to talk to other people about the problem. And again, it's all easier said than done. But once you start to do those things, you put yourself in a position where you have less access to gambling. And as you kind of white knuckle it and you get through those first 90 days, and then you begin to live a life that doesn't involve gambling while trying to become a better person in the interim, I think that slowly but surely it actually just leads to fewer urges and cravings. It's always going to be there. So, there's no magic pill, there's no magic guardrail that fixes all the problems. But the goal is just to make it difficult so that you put yourself in the best position to stay away from it while your brain heals.
Right. Really well said. And, things like setting limits or boundaries, some people think that that's a sign of weakness, but it's really freedom. And when you actually take the time to do things like self-exclude, delete the apps, cash only budgets, turning over your finances, again, like Rob is saying, it gives you the opportunity to pause, reflect, and make a calculated decision that best serves you, as opposed to just feeding into the impulse. And so I know you got to run. I know we have been deep in conversation on a lot of these things, and it's all really, really valuable content that I think, again, will resonate with our audience. So we do have a few more segments, which I think we can maybe table for a part 2, maybe in the coming weeks, coming months. So we're going to transition directly to the rapid fire round, which is the sort of last part of our segment. And so I'm going to ask you a question. Just hit me with the first thing that comes to mind.
Sure.
Cool. You ready?
Yep.
All right. One urge management tool everyone should know.
Delay until the urge goes away. Tell yourself that you're going to gamble if you feel like you want to gamble, but say that you're going to do it an hour from now, and then keep pushing it back an hour until the urge fades.
I like the sort of rhyme. Delay until the urge goes away. That's a really good one. I'm gonna probably steal that. Yeah. One book or video that helped change your mindset.
Atomic Habits, James Clear. It talks about how to develop good habits, how to get rid of bad habits.
Awesome. Most underrated habit or routine in recovery.
Habit or routine, underrated. It's tough. The first thing that jumped into my head is hot yoga, but I don't know that the large portion of your audience is going to do hot yoga. So I'm trying to think of something more widely applicable, because that's what I did.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
We'll call it movement. Call it physical activity.
Physical activity. Biggest myth about gambling addiction.
That it's not a problem if you're up money.
Well said. And the line you tell somebody on day 1 of recovery.
I would say turn your guilt into something that can be used to build you up rather than tear you down. Well
said, Rob. Rob, this conversation has been incredibly powerful. What you're doing through ODAAT Gambling Awareness is more than content. It's a movement. You're reminding people that recovery isn't about shame. It's about honesty and hope. And so I just want to thank you for being here, for your vulnerability, and for everything that you're doing to help people take their lives back one day at a time. For everyone listening, make sure to follow Rob on YouTube and Instagram at ODAAT Gambling Awareness, and visit ODAATGamblingAwareness.com to access resources, take the self-assessment quiz, or connect with organizations like Right Choice, Gamban, and Gamfin. And if you or someone you love is struggling with compulsive collecting, overspending, or gambling-like behaviors in the hobby, Join our free Collectors MD peer support group meetings every Wednesday night from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. And make sure to check out our Unboxed Powered by Collectors MD sessions every Thursday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern, hosted by our partners at the Problem Gambling Coalition of Colorado. You can stream this episode of the Collectors Compass and all others, as well as episodes of Behind the Breaks and Collectors MD features on all major streaming platforms. This is the Collectors Compass. I'm Alyx Efron, reminding you recovery doesn't happen in a single leap. It happens one honest day at a time. Take care of yourselves and remember, collect with intention, not compulsion. We'll see you next time.